Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's time for Krishna book. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And this is the summary study of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam as translated and presented in storybook form by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And it's a very long chapter. This is Volume 2, Chapter 32, the prayers of the Vedas personified. So we're taking it in bits and pieces, and this is part 12. So we're continuing on hearing the prayers of the personified Vedas, which this takes place when the Lord is about to awaken from Yoga Nidra, or his mystic slumber, and periodically the Lord Krishna, in form as Vishnu, Mahavishnu, lies down in the causal ocean and takes a little nap. And when he does that, all the material elements, as well as all the living entities who are attached to trying to enjoy the material nature, everything is withdrawn into his body and remains in a dormant state until it's time for the manifestation of the material creation again, to give facility to the living entities who are attached to trying to enjoy independently of consciousness of Krishna. And at that time, when he's about to reawaken, these are the prayers that the personified Vedas recite. So we'll continue on, it's part 12. Persons who are not devotees take to Vedic ritualistic ceremonies for materialistic reasons, and then they are bewildered. A vivid example can be given. An intelligent person possessing millions of dollars in currency notes does not hold the money without using it, even though he knows perfectly well that the currency notes in themselves are nothing but paper. When one has $1 million in currency notes, he's actually holding only a huge bunch of papers. But if he utilizes it for a purpose, then he benefits. Similarly, although this material world may be false, just like the paper, it has its proper beneficial utilization. Because the currency notes, although paper, are issued by the government, they therefore have full value. Similarly, this material world may be false or temporary, but because it is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, it has its full value. The Vaishnava philosopher acknowledges the full value of this material world and knows how to properly utilize it, whereas a Mayavadi philosopher, mistaking the currency note for false paper, gives it up, cannot utilize the money. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore declares that if one rejects this material world as false, not considering the importance of this material world as a means to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such renunciation has very little value. A person who knows the intrinsic value of this material world for the service of the Lord, who is not attached to the material world, and who renounces the material world by not accepting it for sense gratification, is situated in real renunciation. This material world is an expansion of the material energy of the Lord. Therefore, it is real. It is not false, as it is sometimes concluded from the example of the snake and the rope. The Personified Vedas continue. The cosmic manifestation, because of the flickering nature of its impermanent existence, appears to less intelligent men to be false. The Mayavadi philosophers take advantage of the flickering nature of this cosmic manifestation to prove their thesis that this world is false. According to the Vedic version, before the creation, this world had no existence, and after dissolution, the world will no longer be manifested. Voidists also take advantage of this Vedic version and conclude that the cause of this material world is void. But Vedic injunction does not say that it is void. The Vedic injunction defines the source of creation and dissolution as Yato va imani bhutani jayante. He from whom this cosmic manifestation has emanated, and in whom, after annihilation, everything will merge. The same is explained in the Vedanta Sutra and in the first verse of the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam by the words Janmad Yasya, he from whom all things emanate. All these Vedic injunctions indicate that the cosmic manifestation is due to the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, and when it is dissolved, it merges into Him. The same is confirmed in the Bhagavad-gītā. The cosmic manifestation is coming into existence and again dissolving, and after dissolution it merges into the existence of the Supreme Lord. The statement definitely confirms that the particular energy known as Bahirangamaya, or the external energy, although of flickering nature, is the energy of the Supreme Lord, and as such it cannot be false. It simply appears to be false. The Mayavadi philosophers conclude that because the material nature has no existence in the beginning and is non-existent after dissolution, it is therefore false. But by the example of the earthen pots and dishes, the Vedic version is presented. Although the existence of the particular byproducts of the Absolute Truth are temporary, the energy of the Supreme Lord is permanent. The earthen pot or water jug may be broken or transformed into another shape, such as that of a dish or a bowl, but the ingredient or the material basis, namely the earth, continues to be the same. The basic principle of this cosmic manifestation is always the same, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. Therefore, the Mayavadi philosopher's theory that it is false is certainly only a mental concoction. That the cosmic manifestation is flickering and temporary does not mean that it is false. The definition of falsity is that which never had any existence but is existing only in name. There are no horses, eggs, there is no rabbit's horn, nor are there flowers growing in the sky. There are many things which exist in name or imagination, but actually have no factual manifestation. Such things may be called false. But the Vaishnava cannot take this material world to be false, simply because of its temporary nature is manifesting and again dissolving. The Personified Vedas continued to say that the Supersoul and the individual soul of Paramatma and Jivatma cannot be equal in any circumstance, although both of them are sitting within the same body, like two birds sitting in the same tree. As declared in the Vedas, these two birds, although sitting as friends, are not equal. One is simply a witness. This bird is Paramatma, or the Supersoul. The other bird is eating the fruit of the tree. That's the Jivatma. When there is cosmic manifestation, the Jivatma, or the individual soul, appears in the creation in different forms, according to his previous fruitive activities. and, due to his long forgetfulness of real existence, he identifies himself with a particular form awarded to him by the laws of material nature. After assuming a material form, he becomes subjected to the three material modes of nature and acts accordingly to continue his existence in the material world. While enwrapped in such ignorance, his natural opulences, although existing in minute quantity, are almost extinct. The opulences of the Supersoul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are not diminished, although he appears within this material world. He maintains all opulences and perfections in full, and yet keeps himself apart from all the tribulations of the material world. The conditioned soul becomes entrapped in the material world, whereas the Supersoul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, leaves it without affection, just as a snake sheds his skin. The distinction between the Supersoul and the conditioned individual soul is, the Supersoul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, maintains his natural opulences, known as Sad, Aishvarya, Astasiddhi, and Astaguna. Because of their poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavadi philosophers forget the fact that Krishna is always full of 6 opulences, 8 transcendental qualities, and 8 kinds of perfection. The 6 opulences are that no one is greater than Krishna in wealth, in strength, in beauty, in fame, in knowledge, and in renunciation. The first of Krishna's 8 transcendental qualities is that he's always untouched by the contamination of material existence. This is also mentioned in the Ishopanishad, Apapavidam. Just as the sun is never polluted by any contamination, the Supreme Lord is never polluted by any sinful activities. Similarly, although Krishna's actions might sometimes seem to be impious, he is never polluted by such actions. The second transcendental quality is that Krishna never dies. In the Bhagavad-gītā, 4th chapter, he informs Arjuna that both he and Arjuna had many appearances in this material world, but he alone remembers all such activities, past, present, and future. This means that he never dies. Forgetfulness is due to death. As we die, we change our bodies. That's forgetfulness. Krishna, however, is never forgetful. He can remember everything that has happened in the past. Otherwise, how could he remember that he first taught Bhagavad-gītā yoga system to the sun god Vivaswan? Therefore, he never dies, nor does he ever become an old man. Although Krishna was a great-grandfather when he appeared on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he did not appear as an old man. Krishna cannot be polluted by any sinful activities. Krishna never dies. Krishna never becomes old. Krishna never becomes subjected to any lamentation. Krishna is never hungry, and he's never thirsty. Whatever he desires is perfectly lawful. Whatever he decides cannot be changed by anyone. These are the transcendental qualities of Krishna. Besides that, Krishna is known as Yogeshwar. He has all the opulences or facilities of mystic powers, such as Animasiddhi, the power to become smaller than the smallest. It's stated in Brahma Samhita that Krishna has entered even within the atom. Antaratasta paramanu chayantarastam. Similarly, Krishna, as Garbhodakshai Vishnu, is within the gigantic universe, and he's lying on the causal ocean as Mahavishnu in a body so gigantic that when he exhales, millions and trillions of universes emanate from his body. This is called Mahimasiddhi. Krishna also has the perfection of Laghima. He can become the lightest. It is stated in Bhagavad-gītā that it is because Krishna enters the universe and within the atoms that all the planets are floating in the air. That's the explanation of weightlessness. Krishna also has the perfection of prapti. He can get whatever he likes. Similarly, He has the facilitative isita, controlling power. He's called the supreme controller, Parameshvara. In addition, Krishna can bring anyone under his influence. That's called Vashita. Krishna is endowed with all opulences, transcendental qualities, mystic powers. No ordinary living being can be compared to him. Therefore, the Mayavadi theory that the supersoul and the individual soul are equal is only a misconception. The conclusion is, therefore, that Krishna is worshipable and that all living entities are simply his servants. This understanding is called self-realization. Any other realization of oneself beyond this relationship of eternal servitorship to Krishna is impelled by Maya. It is said that the last snare of Maya is to dictate to the living entity to try to become equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mayavad philosopher claims to be equal to God, but he cannot reply to the question of why he has fallen into material entanglement. If he is the Supreme God, how is it that he's been overtaken by impious activities and thereby subjected to the tribulations of the law of karma? When the Mayavadis are asked about this, they cannot properly answer. The speculation that one is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is another symptom of sinful life. One cannot take to Krishna consciousness unless he's completely freed from all sinful activities. The very fact that the Mayavadi claims to become one with the Supreme Lord means he's not yet freed from the reactions of sinful activities. Srimad Bhagavatam says that such persons are avasuddha buddhaya, which means they falsely think themselves liberated, although at the same time they think themselves equal with the absolute truth. Their intelligence is not purified. The personified Vedas say that if the yogis and the jnanis do not free themselves from sinful desires, then their particular process of self-realization will never be successful. My dear Lord, the personified Vedas continued, if saintly persons do not take care to eradicate completely the roots of sinful desires, they cannot experience the supersoul, although he's sitting side by side with the individual soul. Samadhi, or meditation, means one has to find the supersoul within himself. One who is not free from sinful reactions cannot see the supersoul. If a person has a jeweled locket on his necklace, but forgets the jewel, it is almost as though he does not possess it. Similarly, if an individual soul meditates but does not actually perceive the presence of the supersoul within himself, he has not realized the supersoul. Persons who have taken to this path of self-realization must therefore be very careful to be uncontaminated by the influence of Maya. Sri Rupa Goswami says that a devotee should be completely free from all sorts of material desires. A devotee should not be affected by the resultant actions of karma and jnana. One simply has to understand Krishna and carry out his desires. That is the pure devotional stage. Mystic yogis who still have contaminated desires for sense gratification never become successful in their attempt, nor can they realize the supersoul within the individual self. As such, the so-called yogis and jnanis are simply wasting their time in different types of sense gratification, either by mental speculation or by exhibition of limited mystic powers, will never become liberated from conditional life, will continue to go through repeated births and deaths. For such persons, both this life and the next life become sources of tribulation. Such sinful persons are already suffering tribulation in this life, Because they're not perfect in self-realization, they will be plagued with further tribulation in the next life. Despite all endeavors to attain perfection, such yogis, contaminated by desires for sense gratification, will continue to suffer in this life and in the next. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks in this connection that if sannyasis and persons in the renounced order of life who have left their homes for self-realization do not engage themselves in devotional service of the Lord, but become attracted by philanthropic work, such as opening educational institutions, hospitals, or even monasteries, churches, or temples of demigods, they find only trouble from such engagements, not only in this life, but in the next. Sannyasis who do not take advantage of this life to realize Krishna simply waste their time and energy in activities outside the jurisdiction of the renounced order of life. A devotee's attempt to engage his energies in such activities as constructing a Vishnu temple is, however, never wasted. Such engagements are called Krishnarte Akila Chesta, variegated activities performed to please Krishna. A philanthropist opening a school building and a devotee constructing a temple are not on the same level. Although a philanthropist opening an educational institution may be pious activity, it comes under the laws of karma, whereas constructing a temple for Vishnu is devotional service. Devotional service is never within the jurisdiction of the law of karma. It is stated in Bhagavad-gītā that devotees transcend the reaction of the three modes of material nature and stand on the platform of Brahman realization. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. The Bhagavad-gītā says, Sagunan Samatityaitan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Devotees of the Personality of Godhead transcend all the reactions of the three modes of material nature and are situated on the transcendental Brahman platform. The devotees are liberated both in this life and in the next. Any work done in this material world for Yajna or Vishnu or Krishna is considered to be liberated work, but without connection with Achyuta, the infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no possibility of stopping the resultant actions of the law of karma. The life of Krishna consciousness is the life of liberation. The conclusion is that a devotee, even by the grace of the Lord, the conclusion is that a devotee, by the grace of the Lord, is liberated both in this life and the next, whereas karmis, jnanis, yogis are never liberated, even in this life or in the next. Personified Vedas continued, Dear Lord, anyone who, by your grace, has understood the glories of your lotus feet is callous to material happiness and distress. The material pangs are inevitable as long as we're existing within the material world, but a devotee does not divert his attention to such actions and reactions, which are the results of pious and impious activities. Nor is a devotee very much disturbed or pleased by praise or condemnation by the people in general. A devotee is sometimes greatly praised by the people in general because of his transcendental activities, and sometimes he's criticized, even though there is no reason for adverse criticism. The pure devotee is always callous to praise or condemnation by the ordinary people. Actually, the devotee's activities are on the transcendental plane. He is not interested in the praise or condemnation of people engaged in material activities. If the devotee can thus maintain his transcendental position, then his liberation in this life and the next life is guaranteed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee's transcendental position within this material world is maintained in the association of pure devotees, simply by hearing the glorious activities enacted by the Lord in different ages and in different incarnations. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. Srila Narottam Das Thakur sung, My dear Lord, let me engaged in your transcendental loving service, as indicated by previous acharyas. Let me live in the association of pure devotees. That's my desire, life after life. In other words, a devotee does not much care whether or not he is liberated, but he is anxious only for devotional service. Devotional service means one does not do anything independently of the sanction of the acharyas. The actions of the Krishna conscious movement are directed by the previous acharyas, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami. In the association of devotees, following these principles, the devotee is able to perfectly maintain his transcendental position. In the Bhagavad-gītā, the Lord says, a devotee who knows him perfectly is very dear to him. 4 kinds of pious men take to devotional service. If a man is pious, then in his distressed condition, he approaches the Lord for mitigation of his distress. If a pious man is in need of material help, he also prays to the Lord for such help. If a pious man is actually inquisitive about the science of God, he also approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And similarly, a pious man who is simply anxious to know the science of Krishna also approaches the Supreme Lord. Out of these 4 classes of men, the last is praised by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad-gītā. A person who tries to understand Krishna with full knowledge and devotion by following in the footsteps of previous acharyas conversant with the scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is praiseworthy. Such a devotee can understand that all conditions of life, favorable and unfavorable, are created by the supreme will of the Lord. When he is fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he does not care whether his condition of life is favorable or unfavorable. A devotee takes even an unfavorable condition to be the special favor of the Personality of Godhead. Actually, there are no unfavorable conditions for a devotee. He sees everything coming by the will of the Lord as favorable, and in any condition of life he's simply enthusiastic to discharge his devotional service. This devotional attitude is explained in Bhagavad-gītā. A devotee is never distressed in reverse conditions of life, nor is he overjoyed in favorable conditions. In the higher stages of devotional service, the devotee is not even concerned with the list of do's and do-nots. Such a position can be maintained only by following in the footsteps of the acharyas. Because a pure devotee follows in the footsteps of the acharyas, any action he performs to discharge devotional service is to be understood to be on the transcendental platform. Lord Krishna therefore instructs us that an acharya is above criticism. A neophyte devotee should not consider himself to be on the same plane as the acharya. It should not be accepted that the acharyas are on the same platform as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Let me read that again. I got that wrong. Boy, did I get that wrong. It should be accepted that the acharyas are on the same platform as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, neither Krishna nor his representative acharya should be subject to any adverse criticism by the neophyte devotees. The personified Vedas thus worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different ways. Offering worship to the Supreme Lord by praying means remembering his transcendental qualities, pastimes, and activities. But the Lord's pastimes and qualities are unlimited. It's not possible for us to remember all the qualities of the Lord. Therefore, the personified Vedas worship to the best of their ability, and at the end they spoke as follows. Our dear Lord, although Lord Brahma, the predominating deity of the highest planet Brahmaloka, and King Indra, the predominating demigod of the heavenly planet, as well as the predominating deities of the sun planet, the moon planet, etc., are all very confidential directors of this material world, they have very little knowledge about you. Then what to speak of ordinary human beings and mental speculators? It is not possible for anyone to enumerate the unlimited transcendental qualities of your Lordship. No one, including the mental speculators and the demigods in higher planetary systems, is actually able to estimate the length and breadth of your form and characteristics. we think that even your Lordship does not have complete knowledge of your transcendental qualities. The reason is you're unlimited. Although it is not befitting in your case to say that you do not know yourself, it is nevertheless practical to understand that because you have unlimited qualities and energies, and because your knowledge is also unlimited, there is unlimited competition between your knowledge and your expansion of energies. The idea is that because God and His knowledge are both unlimited, as soon as God is cognizant of some of His energies, He perceives that He still has more energies. In this way, both His energies and His knowledge increase. Because both of them are unlimited, there's no end to the energies, no end to the knowledge with which to understand the energies. God is undoubtedly omniscient, but the personified Vedas say that even God Himself does not know the full extent of His energies. This does not mean that God is not omniscient. When an actual fact is unknown to a certain person, this is called ignorance or lack of knowledge. This is not applicable to God. However, because He knows Himself perfectly, but still His energies and activities increase, therefore He also increases His knowledge to understand it. Both are increasing unlimitedly. There's no end to it. In that sense, it can be said that even God Himself does not know the limit of His energies and qualities. Hey, Krishna. Wow. Govinda. How God is unlimited in His expansion of energies and activities can be roughly calculated by any sane and sober living entity. It is said in Vedic literature that innumerable universes issue forth when Mahavishnu exhales in his yoga nidra, and innumerable universes enter his body when he again inhales. We have to imagine that these universes, which according to our limited knowledge are expanded unlimitedly, are so great that the gross ingredients, the 5 elements of the cosmic manifestation, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, are not only within the universes, but are covering the universe in 7 layers, each layer 10 times bigger than the previous one. In this way, each and every universe is very securely packed, and there are numberless universes. All these universes are floating within the innumerable pores of the transcendental body of Mahavishnu. It is stated, just as the atoms and particles of dust are floating within the air along with the birds, and their number cannot be calculated, so innumerable universes are floating within the pores of the transcendental body of the Lord. For this reason, the Vedas say that God is beyond the capacity of our knowledge. To understand the length and breadth of God is beyond the jurisdiction of our mental speculation. Therefore, a person who is actually learned and sane does not claim to be God, but tries to understand God, making distinctions between spirit and matter. By such careful discrimination, one can clearly understand that the Supreme Soul is transcendental to both the superior and inferior energies, although He has a direct connection with both. In the Bhagavad-gītā, Lord Krishna explains that although everything is resting on His energy, He's different or separate from the energy. Nature and the living entities are sometimes designated as Prakriti and Purusha, respectively. The whole cosmic manifestation is an amalgamation of the Prakriti and Purusha. Nature is the ingredient cause, and the living entities are the effective cause. These two causes combine together, and the effect is that this cosmic manifestation. When one is fortunate enough to come to the right conclusion about this cosmic manifestation and everything which is going on within it, he knows it to be the cause directly and indirectly by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. It's concluded in the Brahma Samhita, therefore, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadir Adi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. After much deliberation and consideration, when one has attained to the perfection of knowledge, he comes to the conclusion that Krishna, or God, is the original cause of all causes. Instead of speculating about the measurement of God, whether he is so long or so wide, or philosophizing, one should come to the conclusion of the Brahma Samhita, Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, or God, is the cause of all causes. That is the perfection of knowledge. Thus the Veda Stuti, or the prayers offered by the personified Vedas to Garbhodakshai Vishnu, were first narrated in disciplic succession by Sanandana to his brothers, all of whom were born of Brahma. In the beginning, the 4 Kumaras were the firstborn of Brahma, therefore they are known as Purvajata. It is stated in Bhagavad-gītā that the Parampara system, or the disciplic succession, begins with Krishna himself. Similarly, here, in the prayers of the personified Vedas, it is to be understood that the Parampara system begins with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana Rishi. We should remember that this Veda Stuti is being narrated by Kumara Sanandana, and the narration is being repeated by Narayana Rishi in Bodhi Ashram. Narayana Rishi is the incarnation of Krishna for showing us the path of self-realization by undergoing severe austerities. In this age, Lord Chaitanya demonstrated the path of pure devotional service by putting himself in the role of a pure devotee. Similarly, in the past, Lord Narayana Rishi was an incarnation of Krishna who performed severe austerities in the Himalayan ranges. Srila Narada Muni was hearing from him. So, in the statement given by Narayana Rishi to Narada Muni, as it was narrated by Kumara Sanandana in the form of Veda Shruti, it is understood that God is the one supreme and that all others are his servants. In Chaitanya Charitamrita it is stated, Ekala Ishvara Krishna. Krishna is the only supreme God, Arasavabritya. All others are his servants. Yariyachi Nachaya Se Tayechi Karanicha. Supreme Lord, as he desires, is engaging all living entities in different activities, and thus they are exhibiting their different talents and tendencies. This Veda Stuti is thus the original instruction regarding the relationship existing between the living entity, their different talents and tendencies. The Veda Stuti is thus the original instruction regarding the relationship existing between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The highest platform of realization for the living entity is the attainment of this devotional service. One cannot be engaged in devotional life or Krishna consciousness unless he's fully free from material contamination. Narayana Rishi informed Narada Muni that the essence of all Vedas and Vedic literatures, namely the 4 Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Puranas, teaches the rendering of transcendental, loving service to the Lord. In this connection, Narayana Rishi has used one particular word, rasa. In devotional service, this rasa is the vaya media, or the basic principle for exchanging a relationship between the Lord and the living entity. Rasa is also described in the Vedas as Isavasya. The Supreme Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure. All the Vedic literatures, the Puranas, the Vedas, the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutras, and so on, are teaching the living entities how to attain the stage of Ras. Bhagavatam also says that the statements of the Mahapurana, Srimad Bhagavatam, contain the essence of rasas in all Vedic literatures. Nigama kalpataror valitam palam. The Bhagavatam is the essence of the ripened fruit in the tree of the Vedic literature. We understand that with the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there issued forth the 4 Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda, and the histories like the Mahabharata, and all the Puranas, which are also considered to be the history of the world. The Vedic histories like the Puranas and the Mahabharata are called the 5th Veda. The verses of Veda Stuti are to be considered the essence of all Vedic knowledge. The 4 Kumaras and all other authorized sages know perfectly that devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the essence of all Vedic literatures. And they are all preaching this in different planets, traveling in outer space. It is stated herein that such sages, including Narada Muni, hardly ever travel on land. They are perpetually traveling in space. Sages like Narada and the Kumaras travel throughout the universe in order to educate the conditioned souls and show them that their business in the world is not that of sense gratification, but of reinstating themselves again in their original position of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in several places that the living entities are like sparks of the fire. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is like the fire itself. Somehow or other, when the sparks fall out of the fire, they lose their natural illumination. Thus it is ascertained that the living entities come into this material world exactly as sparks fall from a great fire. The living entity wants to imitate Krishna, tries to lord it over material nature. Thus he forgets his original position and his illuminating power. His spiritual identity is extinguished. However, if a living entity takes to Krishna consciousness, he is reinstated in his original position. Sages and saints like Narada and the Kumaras are traveling all over the universe, educating people and encouraging their disciples to preach this process of devotional service, so all the conditioned souls may be able to revive their original consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, and thus gain relief from the miserable conditions of material life. Sri Narada Muni is a Naistika brahmachari. There are 4 types of brahmachari, and the first is called Savitra, which refers to a brahmachari who, after initiation and sacred thread ceremony, must observe at least 3 days celibacy. The next is called Prajapatya, which refers to a brahmachari who strictly observes celibacy for at least 1 year after initiation. The next is called Brahma Brahmachari, which refers to a brahmachari who observes celibacy from the time of initiation up to the time of completion of his study of Vedic literature. The next stage is called Naistika, which refers to a brahmachari who is celibate throughout his whole life. Out of these, the first 3 are Upgrimva, which means that the brahmachari can marry later on, after the brahmachari period is over. The Naistika brahmachari is completely reluctant to have any sex life. Therefore, the Kumaras and Narada are known as Naistika brahmacharis. The brahmachari system of life is especially advantageous in that it increases the power of memory and determination. It is specifically mentioned in this connection that because Narada was Naistika brahmachari, he could remember whatever he heard from his spiritual master and would never forget it. One who can remember everything perpetually is called Srutadhar. A Srutadhar brahmachari can repeat all that he has heard verbatim, without notes and without reference to books. The great sage Narada has this qualification, and therefore, taking instructions from Narayana Rishi, he is engaged in propagating the philosophy of devotional service all over the world. Because such great sages can remember everything, the very much thoughtful, self-realized, and completely fixed in the service of the Lord. Thus, the great sage Narada, after hearing from his spiritual master Narayana Rishi, became completely realized. He became established in the truth, and he became so happy, he offered the following prayers to Narayana Rishi. A Naistika brahmachari is also called Virata Vrata. Narada Muni addressed Narayana Rishi as an incarnation of Krishna, and he specifically addressed him as the supreme well-wisher of the conditioned souls. It's stated in Bhagavad-gītā that Lord Krishna descends in every millennium just to give protection to his devotees and to annihilate the non-devotees. Narayana Rishi, also being an incarnation of Krishna, is also addressed as the well-wisher of the conditioned souls. As stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, everyone should know that there is no well-wisher like Krishna. Everyone should understand that Lord Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone and should take shelter unto Krishna. In this way, one can become completely confident and satisfied, knowing that he has someone who is able to give him all protection. Krishna himself, his incarnations, his plenary expansions, are all supreme well-wishers of the conditioned souls. But Krishna is the well-wisher even for the demons, for he gave salvation to all demons who came to kill him at Vrindavan. Therefore Krishna's welfare activities are absolute, for even though he annihilates a demon or gives protection to a devotee, his activities are one and the same. It is said that the demon Putana was elevated to the same position as Krishna's mother. When Krishna kills a demon, it should be known that the demon is supremely benefited by this. However, a pure devotee is always protected by the Lord. Narada Muni, after offering respects to his spiritual master, went to the ashrama of Vyasadeva and narrated the entire story to his disciple. Thus Narada Muni, being properly received by Vyasadeva in his ashram and seated very comfortably, began to narrate what he had heard from Narayana Rishi. In this way, Sukadeva Goswami informed Maharaj Parikshit of the answers to his questions regarding the essence of Vedic knowledge and regarding what is considered to be the ultimate goal in the Vedas. The supreme goal in life is to seek the transcendental blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus become engaged in the loving service of the Lord. One should follow in the footsteps of Sukadeva Goswami and all the Vaishnavas in the disciplic succession, and should pay respectful obeisances unto Lord Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. The four sects of Vaishnava disciplic succession, namely Madhva Sampradaya, Ramanuja Sampradaya, Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, and Nimbarka Sampradaya, in pursuance of all Vedic conclusions, agree that one should surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic literatures are divided into two parts, the Shrutis and the Smritis. The Shrutis are the four Vedas, Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yaju, and the Upanishads. And the Smritis are the Puranas like Mahabharata, which includes Bhagavad-gītā. The conclusion of all these is that one should know Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Parama Purusha, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under whose superintendence material nature works, being created, maintained, and destroyed. After the creation, the Supreme Lord incarnates into three, Brahma, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. All of these take charge of the three qualities of material nature, but the ultimate direction is in the hand of Lord Vishnu. The complete activities of material nature under the three modes are being conducted under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā, Bhagavad-gītā, Niyadarshana, and in the Vedas, Sa Aikshata. The atheistic Sankhya philosophers offer their arguments that this material cosmic manifestation is due to Prakriti and Purusha. They argue that nature and material energy constitute the material cause and the effective cause. But Krishna is the cause of all causes. He is the cause of all material and effective causes. Prakriti and Purusha are not the ultimate cause. Superficially, it appears that a child is born due to the combination of father and mother, but the ultimate cause of both the father and the mother is Krishna. He is therefore the original cause, or the cause of all causes, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita. In the material nature, both the Supreme Lord and the living entities enter. The Supreme Lord Krishna, by one of his plenary expansions, manifests as Kshirodakshai Vishnu, and the Mahavishnu, the gigantic Vishnu form lying in the causal ocean. Then, from this gigantic form of Mahavishnu, the Garbhodakshai Vishnu expands in every universe. From him, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva expand. Vishnu enters into the hearts of all living entities, as well as into material elements, including the atom. The Brahma Samhita says, Antarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. He is within this universe, and also within every atom. The living entity has a small material body, taken from various species and forms, and similarly the whole universe is but the material body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This body is described in the Shastras as Virata Rupa. As the individual living entity maintains his particular body, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains the whole cosmic creation and everything within it. As soon as the individual living entity leaves the material body, the body is immediately annihilated. And similarly, as soon as Lord Vishnu leaves the cosmic manifestation, everything is annihilated. Only when the individual living entity surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is his liberation from material existence assured. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā, Mam evaye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. Surrendering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is therefore the cause of liberation and nothing else. How the living entity becomes liberated from the modes of material nature after surrendering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is illustrated by a sleeping man within a room. When a man is sleeping, everyone sees that he is present within the room, but actually the man himself is not within that body, for while sleeping a man forgets his bodily existence, although others may see that his body is present. Similarly, a liberated person engaged in devotional service of the Lord may be seen by others to be engaged in the household duties of the material world, but since his consciousness is fixed in Krishna, he does not live within this material world. His engagements are different, exactly as the sleeping man's engagements are different from his bodily engagements. It is confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā that a devotee engaged full-time in transcendental loving service of the Lord has already surpassed the influence of the three modes of material nature. He's already situated on the Brahman platform of spiritual realization, although he appears to be living within the body or within the material world. Srila Rupa Goswami stated in this connection in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the person whose only desire is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead may be situated in any condition in the material world. But he is to be understood as Jivan Mukta, that is to say, he is to be considered liberated while living within the body or the material world. The conclusion, therefore, is that a person fully engaged in Krishna consciousness is a liberated person. Such a person has actually nothing to do with the material world. Those who are not in Krishna consciousness are called karmis and jnanis, and they hover on the bodily and mental platforms, and thus are not liberated. The situation is called kaivalya nirasta yoni. A person situated on the transcendental platform becomes freed from the repetition of birth and death. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā, 4th chapter. Simply by knowing the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, one becomes free from the chains of the repetition of birth and death, and after quitting his present body, he goes back home, back to Godhead. This is the conclusion of all the Vedas. Thus one should surrender unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna after understanding the prayers offered by the personified Vedas. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 2nd volume, 32nd chapter of Krishna, prayers by the personified Vedas.